Hi guys, hope everyone's well and welcome back to the Improvement Podcast. So in this episode, I'm going to touch on why more information isn't the issue. So for those who are new to the podcast, my name is Charlie Cuthbert. This is the Improvement Podcast and I touch on all things fitness related, bodybuilding related, and overall just like life related, hence the name Improvement Podcast, because the same practices that will improve your ability to have good adherence and good execution of the process of building tissue, losing body fat, will apply when it comes to other aspects of life, the delayed gratification, the work ethic involved, the routine and structure. I'm a big believer transfers over to other aspects and areas. So this, like I said, episode's going to touch on why you don't need more information. And the reason being is there's more information than ever nowadays. However, people are still struggling to reach their goals. People are still struggling to lose weight, build muscle. People still don't know what to do. So the answer to your problems isn't gathering more information most of the time. Most people know how to reach your goals. Most people kind of know what to do. They're just trying to find the new shiny object, the new shiny diet, the next kind of exciting phase. They're looking for that shortcut. They're looking for that secret win. In all honesty, there isn't one. There isn't one at all. And the reason why that's shown and evident is a lot of people, or there's a lot more people overweight. I'm not sure about the statistics now that GLP-1s are a thing, but let's say before they were relevant, there was a lot more people overweight than there was before the internet exists. And we obviously know that the the science, the research, the knowledge has came up leaps and bounds since then, but people are still overweight. There's more individuals overweight, for example. And what this basically means is the issue isn't the information, it's knowing what to do with the information. It's knowing what information is relevant for your goals, knowing what information isn't. Because there's a lot of people that spend way too much time chasing tiny variables, chasing 1% when they aren't nailing the fundamentals. They are stepping over pounds to pick up pennies or dollars to pick up nickels, depending on your currency. I'm not sure what the European equivalent would be to, oh, cents. Yeah, stepping over euros to pick up cents. So people will try and kind of sweat the small stuff. They'll worry about, right, what exercise is best, or what's the best bicep exercise? What's going to be the most optimal bicep exercise? But they're scrolling TikTok at midnight. They are not nailing their nutrition, their sleep. You know what I mean? They're not nailing what matters. They're not training hard. And it doesn't matter what exercise you're doing if you're 5 reps away from failure. What matters is training to failure. So I'm going to kind of go over what matters most and what you should focus your efforts towards. So they focus on things like supplements, maybe meal timing, fat burners, or the optimal training instead of actually like adherence. So, and again, I've said it time and time again, I know it's not exciting to hear, but the most important thing with any sort of plan is going to be adherence. Adherence always comes first. So whenever you're thinking about, is this better, is that better, think adherence first, right? So for example, if on paper, like, beef was better than chicken in terms of a protein source, but someone absolutely hates beef, then for them, beef is not better. So what's best is what you can stick to, what you can do long term, and what you enjoy. So we want to make sure that's at the forefront of the process. If a client absolutely loves squats and on paper they're maybe not quite as effective, I'd rather program squats and program another exercise because they're going to get more out of that, full stop. So that's going to be a lot more favorable and important towards their goals. So as for the like what matters most, it's of course going to be energy balance, like whatever your goals are. So energy balance is just simply calories in, calories out. So being an appropriate energy balance and having sufficient protein, that's going to be the most important fundamental with your nutrition. The reason being is we can't cheat or get around the laws of thermodynamics, which means calories in, calories out. So if we're not consuming sufficient calories to gain weight, we're not going to gain weight regardless of the foods we're consuming. If we're not consuming little enough calories to lose weight, we're not going to lose weight. We need to be burning more than we're consuming. So that matters most. We can also consider after that our macronutrient distribution. So if you've never heard of like a free DMJ, they've created something called the free DMJ pyramid, nutrition pyramid, and that is very insightful and basically goes over what matters most. And what that pyramid kind of consists of is it basically consists of like the most important variables, and that's calories, macronutrients. After that is micronutrients and fiber. So what that basically means is fruits and veggies and your overall fiber amount and just overall food quality. So that matters more than like when you're timing your food. Some people worry about, oh, are they eating close to bed? That will cause them to gain weight. But calories is at the top of the pyramid. So we know if calories are in the best spot, that's going to be a larger percentage of your progress than macronutrients. After that's in micronutrients and fiber, then meal timing and frequency, and then supplements. So what that basically tells us is don't get distracted by supplements, don't get distracted by meal timing and frequency. Prioritize your calories, your macronutrients, and your micronutrients first. The caveat to that is your meal timing and your meal frequency can impact your ability to get calories in or eat little enough calories. It can impact your ability to get your macronutrients in. Typically, if someone's eating once a day, they're probably not going to get 200 grams of protein in one meal, which is why meal frequency is in a good spot. So the things later on in the pyramid, they matter more when you're already nailing the basics or when they impact your ability to nail the basics. So make sure that comes first. And then as for the like meal timing and frequency, if you are nailing the other variables, then in my opinion, like aiming for at least 3 protein feedings isn't a bad idea. If I had to kind of optimize things, it would be more so 4 to 6. And this will apply when you're in a dieting phase or a gaining phase. And the reason being is when you're in a dieting phase, having that appropriate meal spacing, having let's say 4 to 6, will help in terms of your ability to manage satiety. And we also know that if you're in a gaining phase, if you're eating 3 times a day and your calories are around 3,000 or 4,000, trying to get those meals in such a small amount of meals might become impactful in a negative manner on digestion, on your appetite, on just your overall discomfort. So we've got a guest joining the podcast. My cat has just jumped on the desk, so we'll run with it, and hopefully you can't pick him up on the mic. And same with supplements, like they'll matter at the very end of things. So supplements are like act as like the icing on the cake, same with like your meal frequency and timing. So that's what kind of matters most with nutrition. So diving into training, what matters most with training is going to be, of course, adherence, similar to like your nutrition. After adherence, it's going to be progressive training. And I know that that's very broad, but basically making sure we get some form of progression on a split we can adhere to. So what I'd say is, right, if I had to tell someone, if they came to me and be like, right, what's the most important thing with training? I'd say have a split that suits what you can adhere to and suits your needs. So think about how often you're looking to train, your training frequency, and then have a split that's set up with your training frequency that you can adhere in terms of your time frame. So what that will basically mean is, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see my cat's tail wiggling about on the screen. So yeah, you'll want to consider our overall like training split. So something we can adhere to, and that will apply when it comes to duration, and that applies when it comes to like your exercise selection and overall the amount of times you're training in a week. So what matters most will be, again, progressive training on a split you can stick to. After that, you've got like other smaller variables, but in terms of execution, training's such a rabbit hole. There's so much to training that it's not like I can give you right, this matters, that matters. But it's basically like progressive training in the 6 to 35 rep range on a split you enjoy and can stick to week in, week out. That suits your commitments outside the gym. If I had to summarize, that's what's going to matter most. And like after those variables, we can then look at and start to think about things like effort. Effort will come before anything in terms of like your exercise selection, etc. And even like training split, effort's up there as well, because it doesn't matter, like I touched on earlier, if you're doing the perfect exercise if you aren't training hard, or if you're doing the perfect training split if you aren't training hard. Like, hard training is super, super important, because we know we need to get the stimulative effective reps close to failure to cause muscle growth. And if you aren't training to that proximity to failure, then it doesn't matter how optimal things are on paper. So effort is king there. So how do we know our effort's in a good spot? Your last reps close to failure will involuntarily slow. What that basically means is when we're training really, really hard and we're going for those final reps, your rep speed will be slow unintentionally. It'll take you a very long time or a longer time to complete the reps. If your rep speed does not slow, that's a good sign we are still far away from failure, and you've got more to give in terms of the effort side of things. And you can also consider like things like with our exercises, what will make generally a good exercise will be having a large range of motion, the target tissue being the limiting factor, and also being pretty stable isn't a bad thing as well. And of course, being pain-free. If your exercises meet those criterias, then you're probably not doing that bad a job in terms of picking your movements. So we can also consider like volume. So volume's a bit further down in the period. So the main driver of muscle growth is mechanical tension. In other words, load being placed on the muscle. And we want to progress that through, again, more reps, more load, better execution. And when we think about volume, volume's like the dose. So the exercise in your training split acts as like the medicine. How much actual sets you do will be the dosage. And as for what I mean by that is, the dosage will, of course, influence your outcome, but with the amount of volume we do, it's shown, and this is super valuable and great to know, it's shown that there's not like a linear relationship between getting more volume in and getting more progress. Meaning, the more sets you do, you don't have linear progress, if that makes sense. So it's not like it will just keep going up, going up, going up at the same rate, meaning the more sets you do, the more progress you get. It's kind of researched and well documented that the more work we can do, granted it's recoverable, meaning you're able to progress it and you're not very sore going into the next session. Granted it's recoverable, more volume will give you more results, but the large majority of your progress will come from a low amount of volume. For example, if someone's doing 8 sets a week for their legs, them doubling it, they're not going to get double the muscle growth. They might get a quarter more. They might get a tenth more. So the more work you do, the less you kind of get from it. And the reason why this is so valuable is if you are someone who can only train 3 times a week, you can only train like full body 3 times a week, or 2 times a week. It's valuable knowing that, because you know you can still step forward towards your goals. You know what you can do in the gym, still appropriate, with a low dose, with a low amount of overall sets. So I'd say they're the kind of the fundamentals that matter more with your training. What matters like a bit less than that is going to be like your exercise order, how frequently you're hitting a muscle group on paper. I'd say if we can hit a muscle group 2 times a week, that is quite important and valuable, granted if we can adhere to that. But after that, the exercises we pick, the training style we have, and the training split we have, like things like that matter very little. And a good way to kind of know this is true and to have peace of mind regarding it is if you look at any bodybuilder at the top of the sport, naturally or enhanced. Not that you might not follow bodybuilding, but look at the biggest people in your gym. They don't all do the same things. If you look at the people who are at the top of the sport, they have a few things in common. They train hard, they train consistently, they nail their variables outside the gym. They follow some sort of structure, some sort of plan on a consistent basis, and probably don't hop from plan to plan unless they have a amazing level of genetics. So that gives you kind of peace of mind. It's very, very freeing knowing that, right, calories, protein, that will matter most with diet, overall like just training progressively over time matters most, because it means you're not stressing over the minutiae. Because what isn't good for progress? Stress. So if we can alleviate stress, because we're not worrying about, right, I've had my last meal 2.5 hours ago, I need to eat right now. If we know we're not going to lose muscle doing that, if that's not what the most important factor is, then it gives us that peace of mind and lowers our stress. Some people, they might need more stress. They might need to stress about those variables more, because some people are just too relaxed with their goals. But some people, they can be really uptight and worry when they haven't had a meal in 3 hours and wee things like that. So it's freeing knowing that. So having that plan, you can repeat consistently. And obviously we spoke about the consistency aspect being key, right? So what then matters is, one of the most important variables, in my opinion, that will influence your ability to adhere and just make a lot of progress, is going to be your routine. So having good routine and having good structure, and that will apply with your nutrition, your steps, your sleep, and how you set up your overall environment, and how you meal prep, how you handle those variables. Because if you've got a lack of routine, we've got a lack of ability to hit our goals. Show me someone with a lack of routine, and I'll show you someone with a lack of consistency. The clients who have good structure, they train at similar times, they eat similar meals or the same meals. They'll know when they'll do their steps, they'll know when they'll go to bed and wake up. It just sets your environment up for success, especially when it comes to sleep. If someone's waking up and going to bed at different times, what then changes? Their meal times, their training times, how much water they'll have in by a certain time. They've got so much kind of moving parts. There's so much stuff that can go wrong. Whereas if we can create that structure and routine, an environment that will cultivate success, then you're going to succeed there. And yeah, most people will kind of fail because the approach they choose, the method and strategy they choose, doesn't suit their lifestyle, doesn't suit what they can kind of stick to. And that might apply with, let's say, training, having a split they can't adhere to, or their form of expenditure. They have, let's say, a step go in place when they when or yeah, they've got a set goal in place when they work a very, very, very sedentary job, when they could maybe do cardio sort of thing. So you don't need more motivation, you don't need more knowledge, you just need better systems, practices, structure in place. You need to find the routine, your structure that streamlines things like your meal prep, your training, etc. And what can be super valuable is just, and we know a big part of habit formation, which will tie into consistency. So again, this is at the top of the pyramid, is making it easy. So part of hitting any goals, make it easy, make it attractive, and make it enjoyable. So this is like some information I've got from the book Atomic Habits, which is a great read if you've not read it. So a good example of like making it easy and removing friction is, let's say with your diet, you rely on being in the house, cooking every single meal from scratch for like 6 or 7 days a week, sorry. What do you think your ability to adhere will be like? Pretty poor. Whereas if you can make it easy for yourself by bulk cooking, streamline the process, go one weekly shop so you're organized for the week and you don't need to ever go to the shop throughout the week. If you can streamline things through making sure your diet's enjoyable, making sure that your hunger management's in a good spot, by picking meals that you enjoy but also don't take ages to eat, that will streamline the process, because we make it easy through meal prepping, making things efficient, which will save time, save money, and just make life a lot easier. And if we can make things easy through making sure we manage our hunger and enjoy our food, your ability to adhere is going to be much higher. So progress will come from, the majority of progress will just come from like nailing those basics. So obsess over how you can cultivate an environment that makes it impossible to fail, how you can streamline things that make it easy. Same with training. If you're someone that doesn't train consistently or doesn't nail their training, then make it easy. Take your stuff with you straight from work so you can go straight to the gym, because what that does is it removes the resistance between you and getting that session, because it means you're not needing to go home to get your gym stuff ready to make your pre-workout meal, organize that all prior to going to work or whatever. So basically, to summarize, most people kind of sweat the small stuff when they aren't nailing the basics. So worry about training extremely hard, consistently on a split you enjoy and can stick to. After that, if we want to think about what matters most, train a muscle group 2 times a week, use a large range of motion, relatively stable movements that you get on with and are pain-free. And as for your nutrition, think about making sure your calories and your proteins in a good spot. Your carbs and fats, typically they fall into place without even trying. And then after that, just more so think about having healthy foods. I don't need to explain healthy foods for you. You do kind of know. I'm not going to debate if seed oils are good and bad for you, but eat plenty of fruit and veg, lean meats, etc. And then after that, think about how we can make carrying out the practices I touched on there, as well as a good sleep routine, good stress management, as easy and as possible. Streamline it as much as possible so you can stick to it, even on the days where motivation's low, your enjoyment for training's low, you're very hungry, you can't be bothered cooking. We want to make it as easy as possible. So we want to be lazy in the sense that we want to make it so easy that we're being lazy by making it so convenient and sustainable. So hope the episode helped. If it did, drop me a like, drop me a comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're listening to it on YouTube. And if you're listening to it on Spotify or Apple, leave me a rating and review. Any support's massively appreciated. Any topics you'd like to see covered, let me know, and tag me on your Instagram and share it to your story if you did enjoy it.